Hello, this is Sir Coffee Guy here, and I'm just showcasing a few cool build hacks and build uses for some of the new 1.21 blocks that have been introduced in the snapshots thus far. Now, it is worth mentioning that these are snapshots, so there will definitely be more blocks added than the ones that are just here, but so far here are a few of the uses I've come across. Now, before going over some hacks themselves, I think it's pretty useful to go over all the blocks that I'm actually making hacks and designs for. So of course we have a bunch of new copper blocks, and some of these have already been in the game, like the normal copper and the cut copper, but blocks like the chiseled copper, the copper grate, the copper door, the copper trapdoor, and the copper bulb are all brand new. And there are also variations for various levels of oxidization for each of these. Now, we also have the instruction of the auto crafter, which is primarily a redstone block, but it does lend itself to a couple of uses in building too. Now, Tuff has already been in the game, but now we have Tuff stairs, Tuff slabs, and Tuff walls, and we also have lots of variations for Tuff as well. There's polished Tuff, there are chiseled Tuff bricks, and normal Tuff bricks, with a lot of slab and stair and wall variations for each of those. So, now let's start going over some of the hacks and uses I've found for these. So, the autocrafter doesn't have a ton, but I did find a couple of uses. Now, first of all, I think it makes a very good base for walls, particularly walls made of oak planks, because if you look here, it shares a very similar texture to the oak planks up above, but it has these harsh, like almost iron-looking lines going down the middle and the sides, as well as this like stone up on top, which makes it look like reinforced. And a base for a wall is just when you add a different block at the bottom to make it look more supported. Like if I added smooth stone and replace cobblestone here, it makes the villager house look like it's a little bit more secure and structured and a little well put together. So if you want to get that look, this looks like a reinforced oak wood plank wall. I've also, this is a little more general, but I find myself using a lot of these gray, very industrial looking blocks in a lot of my builds, like the smithing table, the furnace, and the anvil, just to name a few. And the crafting table never really went with those. If we take a look at it, it's bright and saturated, has a big, bright, orangey leather top on it, and a bunch of big whites for the metal tools on the side. It's just very, very bright. And this has much more muted colors and lots of grays, which lends itself to this aesthetic a lot better. Now, this over here is less of a build hack and more just showing off how the completely clean copper trapdoors, doors, and grates pair with different wood types, because it does definitely go with some wood types better than others. Now, this definitely is not the best way of showing off how each of those goes with each different palette of wood. It's a little rushed, but you can take a look at some of these. Now, I found that it goes with a few select wood types really, really well. I don't have a ton of thought on the jungle and acacia wood. It goes very well with them because the copper blocks, while being mostly tan and brown, they do have a little bit of pink and orange hues thrown in there too, and jungle wood has a little bit of a pinkish hue that matches the copper very well, but there isn't a lot of contrast between the two. They kind of blend into each other. Same with the acacia, actually. Once again, there's some orange hues at play in the copper, and the acacia planks just kind of blend with it, which if that's what you want, that's great, but it doesn't lend itself to contrast nearly as well. Now, here are my two favorites to pair with the copper, is the dark oak and the mangrove. Now, the mangrove, because it has lots of pink hues thrown in there too, lots of pinks and a little bit of like magenta colors thrown in there, which goes a lot nicer with the copper, but it's still dark enough to provide lots of contrast. And the dark oak might go the best with it. While it doesn't share those orange and pink hues, it definitely shares with contrast. It has lots and lots of contrast with the copper here. Because the dark oak and the copper both are like sleek and smooth and look very grand, and they share a similar aesthetic in that regard. But the copper is just a lot brighter, and it's very shiny, and it just lends itself to a bit more dynamic contrast with that wood type. Although I think it goes alright with most wood types, I would not recommend pairing it with the spruce and oak personally. I just don't like how it looks. The oak is just very tan, the spruce is very brown, and the kind of orangey pinkish hues in the copper just don't go very well with those in my opinion. Now we can actually take a look at how these blocks look a little bit in a build here. This is just a small like front for a house or something I threw together. So I used it with some of the jungle wood and the mangrove wood. And although there isn't a ton of the copper stuff in here, I used some copper bulbs down there and then doors and trapdoors here. And you can definitely see that it fits in pretty well. And the copper doors look very reinforced. They have these big locks on them. At least it looks like locks to me. So, I don't know, that can definitely help with the aesthetic I wanted to go for. And this is what it looks like with the mangrove, which I think it looks very good. Now, next up, a use for the copper grate I was thinking about. When I looked at it, I thought it screamed fireplace to me. Like, you know, it looks like something that fire should be behind in, like, a mantle. So I built this big, grand fireplace here. And, you know, I used a bunch of copper grates down here with a bunch of fire behind it. And I really like it. There isn't a ton of copper in this build, but I think that the brightness of the copper especially contributes to, like, the heat of the fire. Like, it makes it all look hotter and warmer over here. And I also used some of the copper trapdoors, some of the very oxidized copper trapdoors in this fireplace because, well, you see in Minecraft, grays are one of the biggest building colors that you'll use. There are a lot of gray blocks in Minecraft. And trapdoors are also very useful in Minecraft because there's a very easy way of adding depth to your builds and breaking up flat-looking walls and pillars. But the trapdoors don't really pair very well with the grays in most cases because of the huge brightness and color of a lot of the trapdoors. Even some like the darker ones, like the dark oak, which is a very dark brown, it still is just very saturated, and it just kind of clashes with the stones. But the less saturated oxidized copper trapdoors I find pair very well with a lot of the stones, which is why I think I'll be using them with a lot of gray blocks in the future. Next up, I want to talk about some of the new Tuff blocks. Now, I think the polished Tuff is easily the least interesting to me. It reminds me a lot of polished andesite, and it's still, much like all of those polished blocks, has this really ugly grid that forms in the middle of it when you build with it, which makes using it for like large structures and walls very difficult. But I really like the Tuff bricks here. They're very interesting aesthetic. They're very harsh geometrical designs. I mean, there's a lot of different bricks in Minecraft, but most of them, like, you know, just like the deep slate bricks, to pull an example, they look very flat against the wall. They don't look like they come out a lot, and they look like almost a little bit rounded on the edges. They don't have very sharp corners on a lot of these bricks. But on the ones over here, it is harsh geometric lines and squares and rectangles. And that lends itself to a very interesting aesthetic. I think it would work really well in like a futuristic setting or like a very like robotic area because of the harsh geometric design. But you can also use it in plenty of other areas too. Now I did build a little wall here. The Chiseled Tuff I don't have a ton to say about, but yeah, I find it useful for the same reasons all the other chiseled variations of other bricks are useful, which is it's very good for breaking up big flat walls like the wall here, although it's alternating between Tuff bricks and polished Tuff. It doesn't have a lot going on, so adding the Chiseled Tuff in here just breaks up the design a little bit more and gives you a little more to look at. And then I think that the Chiseled Tuff bricks, which is easily my favorite of these blocks, is incredible. First of all, it makes a really nice base for a wall like this. It looks very sturdy and secure. And it also has a very interesting pattern. The kind of like up and down snake pattern on the bottom and top is very interesting. And honestly, it reminds me a lot of like Mayan or Aztec like structures and stuff like that. And I think it lends itself to a really fascinating aesthetic. And I think that you could use it in a variety of ways. I also really like the top of this block too, which provides once again another harsh geometrical shape. I think it works very well for tiled floors or ceilings. And I think it pairs very well with the blast furnace in particular because the blast furnace has this slightly rounded outline on it that gives like an almost circular pattern here when paired with a lot of the Tuff bricks. So it makes it look like there's like these harsh squares and then these soft circles, which kind of provides even more contrast in a shape like this. Now I am going to show off what some of this looks like in a build over here. I mean, I've made like some rough copper bulb lamps here. But primarily, I use the Chiseled Tuff bricks as a base for this small little build over here. And I think it's a very effective one. It just looks very secure, and it's a lot more interesting than using something like some of the concretes that don't have a lot of texture to them. It's just a block that has a lot to look at, and it's a very interesting pattern, and it looks very good for a base. Now, lastly, I do want to look at some of these copper blocks a little bit closer. So I built a bathroom with a mirror over here. I built this little bathroom design, and there's a lot of different things to show off here. So, first of all, this isn't anything new, but I think that the oxidized cut copper and the prismarine bricks pair very nicely together. They provide like a very similar color palette, and I think that the very harsh like tiles that you get out of the cut copper just looks very, very good in a bathroom. It looks right at home in a bathroom like this one. Now, one of my favorite things here is using the oxidized chiseled copper here, because the chiseled copper block, to me at least, looks a lot like a fan. Like, it looks like you have 4 blades on a fan that's integrated into a vent in the wall. So I put a couple of these here, which makes it look like there are vents, which makes sense in a bathroom, right? You want vents with fans that are going to pull all the stinky air out and pull in fresh air. Now, I also used the copper grate down here in the shower, because, of course, when you're showering, you want to drain. So I feel like that's a little self-explanatory, but it looks right at home in here. And lastly, I used that tile pattern I showed outside for the ceiling here, as well as using some copper bulbs up top, and I'm giving away the illusion, and like the waxed exposed copper trapdoor here, as well as waxed exposed copper bulbs up there, just to get a bit of a softer brown. And I really like these copper bulbs for the ceiling, because these blocks I think they just really work as ceiling lights a lot, because they look almost like circular lights. But when they're placed in one block, it can look, well, it just look blocky, I guess. I don't know. I think that they integrate very well into a flat surface like a ceiling, and they're very good, natural-looking ceiling lights. That is about all I have for this. This has been fun. It's fun building some of these concepts here. I'm sure that there will be plenty more build hacks and ideas I'll think of later for these blocks, as well as plenty of new blocks in the 1.20 update that I'll be able to go over in the future. But I hope you enjoyed. Bye.